Okay, good morning, everyone. Audible?
Good morning, sir. Yes, sir, you are audible.
So, what was the last step we did in our previous class? Possibly it was project cost. Under project cost, which example was? What was the last thing we have discussed in our previous class?
We had written the question for example tuition.
Example two, that means one first example is complete.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, what was the project cost? Have obtained first example.
14,150.
14,000.
150.
So we'll start with this component. Just make note of this. This is the second example. I think we have not written the question statement. Is it right? Did we write the question?
Yes, sir, we have written.
I have already written. Activity. So just note the title here. The short duration is nothing but crash duration. Next, cost of reduction per day. Cost of reduction. Well, 8. Cost of 18. This was some direct some of the data is given. Right. So this was given in the previous class, so I'm not spending much time. Direct cost was, what was the indirect cost?
160 per dose.
Penalty cost,
100 rupees for crossing 17 days.
is supposed to be optimum plus cost. Okay. So this is done. Next, we start with first step is we have to determine project completion duration. Determine. So different possible paths. So what are the different possible paths here?
One to two, 2 to 4, 4 to 6,
So what is the duration?
6, 3, 8.
Next,
1 to 3, 3 to 6, 8 plus 12.
8 plus
12. 1 to 4. 4 to 6. 5 plus 8. 1 to 4. 4 to 6.
1, 2, 4, 6. Is it right? 1, 2, 4, 6 is done.
Yes, sir.
Oh, just check the next path. One, two, four. Yes, yes, you are right. 1 to 4 and 4 to 6. Right. 1 to 4 is how much?
5
5 and
plus 8.
8. Next.
2 to 5.
Uh, next path.
2 to 5.
Oh, next path. Next path has to start from 1 itself. All the path has to start from first node.
5 to 6.
Anyone else? So what is the path duration of this? Anyone else? 1, 2, 5, 6. What is the path duration? One, 2, 5, 6. Anyone else? What is the path duration of
Plus 5 plus 6.
how much?
6 plus 5 plus 6.
6 plus 5 plus 6. And that is
17.
so anyone else? What is the critical path here? Anyone else?
sir. 20 days, sir. Part 2.
20 days.
Correct. Path 2 to the critical path.
20 days.
That's right. That's right. Oh, okay. So I'm just waiting. Makes note of it. So critical path should be 1-3-6 equal to 20 days. Okay, that's right. So once that is done, calculate the project completion duration, project cost. Project cost should be calculated for 20 days. So those who have completed this, calculate the project cost. What would be the different components, project cost? Determining the project cost, what would be the different components? So I assume that everyone has made note of this, correct? Next is determination of project cost. Project cost calculation. So project cost calculation. Project cost is equal to total direct cost plus what would be the next component?
Total indirect cost.
Total indirect cost. That's right. Total indirect cost for 20 days. Correct. That's right. Next.
Increment cost.
Increment cost is anyways not incurred this first first cycle, or this is not even first cycle. Increment cost is not there. Next. Any other cost to be included here?
Penalty cost.
Yes. Penalty cost for how many days?
3 days.
Yes, that's right. That is for 3 days. Why only 3 days?
Because it has given 17 days here, and we have to like 20 minutes.
Yes, so project completion duration is 17, and project completion duration is 20, and they have asked us to put penalty cost if it crosses 17 days. Here it has crossed 17 days. 20 minus 17 is 3 days. Okay, so we have to first determine the total direct cost. How to determine the total direct cost? So total normal cost is equal to total normal cost is how much is the total normal cost? Okay, I think it is already calculated, is it right? It is given in the question statement itself. So we do not have to write this. So what should be the total normal cost?
6,500.
6,500. Okay, next total indirect cost for 20 days.
3,200.
2,200 because 160 into 20 is equal to 3,200. Correct. Next, penalty cost.
300.
Okay. Any other answers? How much is the penalty cost? Three days penalty cost is how much?
300.
300. So what will be the total project cost?
10,000.
Total project cost. How much is it?
10,000.
Correct. Yes. So if there is any doubts, you can just ask determining all these steps. Okay, so once this is done, you can start with cycle 1. Cycle 1, first write the critical path and its duration. And next write the list of critical activities, so on and so forth. So I have completed writing this. First write the critical path and its duration, and after that list the critical activities. Okay, so I assume that everyone has made note of this. Going ahead. So here we start with cycle one. Cycle one. Uh, Writing the critical path. Critical path and duration. Critical path and its duration. Critical path of previous cycle. So all this explanation is not required. Those who have understood it, they can just directly write the critical path and start listing. Correct. Some of them may require some explanation to be written, so they can make note of this. Critical path of previous calculation. So in our previous calculation, which was the critical path? It was equal to 20 days. Therefore, critical activities. Now tell me which are the critical activities. Which are the critical activities?
1-3 and 3-6.
Yes, any other answers?
Same, sir.
Same. So critical activities. This we list and we'll try to select either 1-3 or 6 for our further calculations. Correct. So list of critical activities. We will select actually selection of list of critical activities. List of critical activities. And normal division. Crash duration. Crash duration is nothing but the short duration and the problem. Cost of per day. Okay, so what should be the list of activities? 1-3 and 3-6. What is the normal duration?
8, 12,
And
8,
cost of production
90,
90.
200.
These are the list of critical activities and their cost of. Now, how do we select? On what basis to select the critical activity? Or how do we proceed ahead? How do we select one critical activity?
least
1-3 cost of
1 dash 3 reduce. Okay, any other answers?
1-3, sir.
1 dash 3 has to be 1 dash 3 has to be reduced. The reason for that is that is the reason we select this for the next step. Okay. So, therefore, select 1 dash 3 activity. Path. So this is so normal duration is how much? Normal duration
8.
1 dash
4.
therefore number of reduction possible is so all these steps are not required. In the examination, you can directly write the number of days it has to be reduced, and you can continue with the calculation. But here, since, first, first or second example, is the reason we have to write each step. So, what is the total number of reduction possible here?
4.
4 days. Correct, but here there is we can actually reduce this activity by 4 days. But what happens is, if you reduce this activity by 4 days, what will happen to the critical path duration? Initially, it was 20 days. Now, what will be the path duration? Initially, it was 20 days. Now, if you reduce 1 dash 3 by 4 days, then what will be the path duration now?
16.
Correct. So now the path duration will be 16 days. Correct. And what will happen is, consequently, this path will become non-critical. Alright. So that should not happen. Critical path should not become non-critical, and it should remain as critical towards until the end of the problem. Okay. Now 20 days it is actually taking, and if you reduce this path by 4 days, then it will become 16. Okay. Now if it becomes 16, it becomes the non-critical path. So that should not happen. Yet we should not be altering the nature of the project. Okay, so this is actually the nature of the project, that 1 dash 3 dash 6 is the critical path. So that should not be altered. Okay. The critical path should remain as critical until towards the end of the project cost calculation. Okay, so this is done. Now, therefore, I reduce the path duration become path duration is 1 dash 3 dash path duration will become uh, okay. Therefore, this path would become one that case. Correct. Is there any doubts or anyone wants to explain this one? Why this has become non-critical? Here, the other path, if you look at the other path, yes. So the other path is having 17 days as the path duration. These two paths are having 17 days as the path duration. So what will happen is, if you reduce this path by 4 days, this is 1 dash 3, correct? Now 1 dash 3 dash 6 is the path. Now if you reduce 1 dash 3 by 4 days, then what will happen is this will become 16 days. Now if this becomes 16, what will happen is this becomes non-critical. It should not happen. Okay. So why this becomes non-critical? Because 16 is less than 17. 16 is less than 17. So that should not happen basically. The reduction should be in such a manner that the critical path should remain critical towards the end of the problem. Okay. So in such a manner, the reduction is to be done. If there is any doubts, you can ask. Any doubts? Or anyone wants to explain this once again? I assume that everyone has understood this. Therefore, activity 1 dash 3 can be reduced to 3 days. Okay. Is there any type of doubts here? Why only 3 days? Why not 4 days? Anyone wants to explain this once again? So if you reduce this 1 dash 3 by 4 days, then 1 dash 3 dash 6 will become non-critical. That is the reason we have to reduce this path by only 3 days, not more than that. Okay, so just make note of this. For the next one. Okay, so once this is done, um, mining the revised project duration we get. Okay, so how do we determine this? Different possible paths are. So what are the different possible paths and their durations?
One, two, four, six.
And what is the path duration?
17 days.
Field days
136.
136.
20 days.
How much?
20 days.
It was 20 days previously. Now 1 dash 3.
16 days.
Now this 1 dash 3 is reduced only by 3 days. Right? So it will be 17 itself. Is it right?
Yes,
Five-
sir.
5 plus 2, it is 17 days. Next. What is the next part?
146.
146. How much?
13 days. 1256. 17 days.
So this is the answer. Now, if you have to see, this path was critical. This path was critical even in our previous calculation. Now, this is critical even in this particular calculation also. So the calculation has to be done. That means what? Critical path in the first calculation remain as critical until the end of okay. Action has to be done. Okay, so those who have completed this determine the budget cost.
The other two paths also have the same duration,
Yes,
sir.
that is fine. That is okay. If other two paths also become critical, that is not an issue, but the previous critical path should remain critical in this cycle. So effectively, if you have to see, there will be three critical paths, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so next determine the project cost. And meanwhile, if anyone has any get it clarified.
Sir, one doubt is there, sir. Actually, in the previous path 1-3-6, reduction period is 4, right?
Right.
Then how it will become 3?
That means we mean to say that here it is 4. Is it right? This is what we mean to say. Just use 4 days. This is what we meant to say. The value is 4 over here. Why did we reduce it only by 3? Or is it some other value? Vishal?
So he's telling about that number of reduction possible having 4 days. and then we are taking it as 20 minus 4 as 16 days because it will become non-critical path.
So here, number of reduction, possible reduction is 4 days. But we have only considered 3 days. The reason for that is, see here, what happens is if we consider 4 days as a reduction, it is the maximum possible duration by which you can reduce an activity. Crash duration means what? Say normal duration is 8 days and crash duration is 4 days. That means what? This is the maximum possible. This is the maximum possible days by which you can reduce. That means what? Or in other word, if you can say, it is in the range of 1, 2, 3, and 4, not beyond that. Are you getting this? So either you can reduce this activity by 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, or 4 days. So the option is yes. Right? So, but you cannot go beyond that. Crash duration means maximum you can stop, you can finish this activity by 4th day. And similarly here it is, you can finish this activity by 8th day. That means what? Here you can reduce this activity you can reduce it by 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, or 4 days, but not beyond that. Okay, so now the next question is why we have selected only 4 days? Why we have selected 3 days? Why we are selecting 3 as the value, but why we are not selecting 4? Is the next question. So the answer for that is that come back to this. So this is the calculation. Now, initially it is taking, this path is taking 20 days, correct? Now, if I subtract this with 4, what will be the value? If I subtract this with 4, what will be the value here? Vishal, if I subtract this path with 4 days,
16.
yes, Vishal,
Yes, sir.
Yes.
16.
16, is it right? Now, if it is 16, is it lesser than 17 days?
Yes, sir.
Or
Yes, sir.
isn't it? It is lesser than 17 days. Now, will this value change? Will this value reduce? If you reduce 1 dash 3 by 4 days, will it have any impact on this value? 17?
No, sir.
No. No. Is it right? Why? Because this doesn't have 1 dash 3, but it is only having 1 dash 2. Both the path, it is 1 dash 2. 1 dash 3 is only in this particular path. So if you reduce 1 dash 3 by 4 days, this path will reduce. So what will happen is this should not happen. Okay, this path should not go below this 2 paths. Why? Because this is 17. Now this has become lesser than 16 has become lesser than 17. That should not happen. Are you getting the point?
Yes, sir.
Yes. But if it is equal, it is fine. Not an issue. Now, let us assume that instead of subtracting this by 16, let us assume I would have subtracted this by 3. Okay. I would have subtracted this by 3 days. Now, what is the answer?
17.
17 days. Now, is there any problem? Now, 17 is equal to 17, equal to this 17, and it is also equal to 17. Correct? Now, is there any problem?
No, sir.
Correct. So, this reduction can be done. Is it right? So, what does this total number of reduction mean here? Total possible number of days. Here, this gap of 4 days. So normal duration of 1 dash 3 is 8 days. Crash duration is 4 days. Total number of reduction possible is 4 days. That means what? It can be 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and 4 days. Anywhere between this. But it is not compulsory that you have to do the reduction for 2 days. No. You can reduce it even by 2 days or by 1 day or 3 days also. Correct? Are you getting the point?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is how we are supposed to do the reduction. Okay. Any other doubts? Anyone has any other doubts? You can ask, because this is very understandable, because in previous batch, many of them had asked question on this. There is any more doubts or clarification you have, you can ask.
Sir, what if the in the first place itself, in the first step we have same durations, like
Let us assume that okay, the first step itself, let us assume that
20 was not there,
Not.
like in the first.
17. Is it right? So, if in the first step itself we could have got 3 critical paths, then what we would have done? We would have listed all the critical activities. So after this, let's see what we have done. We calculated the project cost. So you have to calculate the project cost for 17 days. Only that penalty cost, will it be there? Will the penalty cost be there?
No, sir.
For 17 days, it will not be correct. Why? Because penalty is only for that project which passes 17. And here also you would have calculated the indirect cost for 17 days. This would have changed. And next, you would have come to critical path determination and its duration calculation, correct? Here you would have listed 2 more, path 1 and path 4, correct? And both would have been 17 days, correct? So here, what would be the change? Here, the change would be in the critical activities, list of critical activities. Is it right? So critical activities would be 1-2, 2-4, so on and so forth. Whatever is there in these 2 paths, everything would have been listed. Correct?
Yes.
And simultaneously, this table also would have the entries in this table would have increased 2-5, so on and so forth. And somewhere, if this cost is less, then you would have selected this. Correct? 2-5, if it was less. I don't know what is the actual cost. Assuming the increment cost is less, you will select or 2-5. Correct?
Yes.
So the same step, that is, there is nothing difference, but a valid question. So in the first step itself, if you would have got few critical paths, then how the calculation would have changed. Next. Okay, I think what was our last calculation? 17 days. Okay. So for this, we will calculate the project cost and then we will finish the business. Project cost is equal to total direct cost. What is the next component? Direct cost. Next.
Total indirect cost
Indirect
160 to 70.
cost. Next. Component. Direct cost is the direct cost is the different cost for activity. Which is that activity? Which activity is what is the direct cost? 500. What is the indirect cost? Cost is 3 days plus 100. So what is the total cost?
Nine thousand 520.
9,000.
520.
That's it, right? So everyone getting the same answer?
Yes, sir.
So, all right. So this is calculation process. Okay, then last year's just
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
thank you. Thank you. So thank you everyone. So we conclude the class.